Push record.
I just did. Thank you. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Hopefully this will work for an alternative or at least a little bit extra oomph, if you will, to get ready for the CPRP exam. And I'm glad to see that there's 15 people on, so that's really awesome. And what I've just done, I just muted everybody. So there is a way to raise your hand, and I haven't really, I can't see it on my screen at the moment, but if you just chat, look for the chat box. There's a chat box that allows you to type in notes to everybody or just notes to me or one of the individuals that are on here. So let's just leave it for everyone at this moment. And you might see somebody on there you know, and you can carry on a chat with them in private too if you feel like you want to take a break from listening to me. So so thanks for being here again. And what I'm going to do is you should be able to see my screen. You should be able to hear me. And we are going to so somebody just, let's see here. There we go. And so you should be able to see my screen, and what I'm going to do is talk briefly about some ground rules. And so one of the things I found out that this particular study course, and that I noticed, and I actually confirmed it with a couple people this morning, is that this particular book is a nationwide book. And so sometimes it has things that I would never even do in my agency, and you probably wouldn't either. But because it's a national book and it covers the best practices in all parts of the nation, and also all types of parks and recreation, either a municipality or a state or a district. These are all their best, I guess, explanation. So you may, if you went through the material, you probably already have seen some of these types of things where, well, we don't really do things that way in blank. And so we want to make sure that you understand that, we are only studying to the test. And so sometimes they may conflict a little bit with what you actually do. These sessions are being recorded, and I really would appreciate it if you wouldn't distribute them to others. I'm not really doing a distribution quality recording. We will have some discussion and on some of these topics when I unmute everybody, if we can make that work, or unmute one person, for example. So one of the things that I'm asking is that you don't distribute this to others. This is just for our use. And the 40 of us are going through this together. If you want to distribute it, just let me know. And so at least there's a little bit of control, and I know who's getting it, and so we can have a chat about keeping it between us. That would be helpful. And then if you keep background noise to a minimum when we do unmute everybody, sometimes I'll unmute everybody, and so if there's background noise, if you're typing or anything like that, it will come up, and so then I'll have to turn it off again. The way we can manage this, my phone number, I'm going to put it right here on the document. You should all have it though. So there it is there, and if you want to text me there, it's on right now. And so you can text me if you have you can't even find the chat box. There's a way for you at least to 480-285-7288 to text me, and that phone is on right now. Okay, so I went through some best practices to be able to tell you about how I'm going to help facilitate for some people. And certainly, you probably all heard me say or read this in one of my messages, is that, if you feel like you want to move on and just go right ahead, right now that your application process is complete, and if Molly has sent you your candidate handbook, basically you are certified at this point to take the test at any time you feel like you're ready. The issue is, I don't know what the process is. The candidate handbook probably says what it is, but I don't know what the process is to retake the test. And I'm not, I didn't even read that because I don't plan to retake mine. I'm taking the CPRE at the same time you all are doing this. So instructions to take the test are in the candidate handbook. And all the materials from NRPA are only available to you for 180 days, so that's 6 months. I would love it if everybody, all 40 of us could take our test before a conference, so you all can get up there and say, we're all new CPRPs, but even if you haven't taken it, I still want everybody to come up during that portion of the presentation so that whether you've taken it yet or not, we can honor your commitment to excel in this area. And the preparation, there's 2 reasons to prepare like we're doing, and that is to increase your knowledge and hopefully also reduce your test and anxiety. That's really important for people. Anytime you take a test, the more you practice, the more you increase your knowledge, the better off you'll be. So I scheduled out 7 weeks, this time every week for 7 weeks. And the first one, I wanted to do a little overview like I'm just doing right now, and I'm going to launch into a couple things, and then begin the HR section, and then finish the HR section next week. It's kind of a long section, and hopefully get through finance in 1 week, communications, operations, programming, and then any remaining things we have to talk about in week 7, and then go over the practice book in the book. So the book I'm following is called and you guys don't have this unless you purchase it separately, it's the official study guide for the Certified Parks and Recreation Professional Examination. Now, what you all got was the online version of this book, which is what you should have hopefully reviewed before today's session. But if you didn't review it, that's fine, because we're going to go through some elements of it. And if you want a hard copy book, this book I believe is $45 for members and $65 for non-members, something like that. And some people prefer to have a hard book that they can look at, highlight, study from, and things like that. So if you decide that you want to move ahead from this, because I'm going to try to go through as much of this as possible, but this is a great resource, and actually this is all I used when I passed my CPRP. So it's called the Certified Parks and Recreation Professional Examination, 5th edition, official study guide. So everybody should have gotten their candidate handbook and read through that as well. And so now that allows you gives you the testing information. When you go take your test, it's done through a company called PSI. And I just wanted to point out a couple little things that I experienced. They don't have any outcome or stake in what you do. They are only there to help you facilitate the test. So they're hired to confirm your identity and to also oversee and facilitate the examination and make sure every test candidate has the best opportunity to perform. But during that test, they can't ask you can't ask them any questions about the examination, only the process, like how to score something or whatnot, to go back or something like that. You schedule a date. I believe they'll send you a time, and so you might have to be flexible. Make sure you're flexible on the date. Last time I did this, they didn't give me a time until they responded back to me. They may have updated their system by now, and you can reschedule the appointment time, like. This doesn't have anything to do with if you failed the test or not. But if you made an appointment, you can change it once at no charge. And as long as you give them, like, I think it's a couple days notice. And you're expected to schedule your own exam with the testing company, and you have to do it within 1 year of when you received your email from Molly saying that you can schedule. And that's basically when she sent you the candidate handbook. So there's 5 content domains, and you probably have already read about some of this, but I just felt compelled to go over it again. And you probably have seen those, and we're going over they're listed there on your screen. When you go to on exam day, make sure you are not late. If I think it's more than 10 or 15 minutes late, it says here 15 minutes late, you will not be admitted. So make sure that you are there. You need to bring 2 forms of identification. One has to have a photograph, and the candidate will also be required to sign a roster. And so you can use a current driver's license with a photograph, or a state identification card with a photograph, or a current passport, or a current military card with a photograph. And then if you have like an employment ID card, student ID card, those are not acceptable for your primary one. And so make sure that you know what you're bringing. And when I went, I had my driver's license and my passport. So I had 2 forms, and that way I was covered. They give you a chance to take a little practice test on the computer before you start. I highly recommend you do this because, and it doesn't count against your time, it's just to get used to that system and how it works. And then you'll begin the actual examination. And you have 3 hours to complete you have 3 hours to complete the practice, examination, and the survey. So it does count against your time, so I take that back. You don't have to take the practice exam, but I did, and it just kind of helped me to get used to the system. It doesn't last very long. You can also, if you want to see the little time box on the monitor, letting you know what time. I turned it off. You can turn it off, but it's on, and you can watch your time click away. That just caused me more stress, so I decided to turn it off. You cannot take in the room cell phones, handheld computers, electronic devices, pagers, watches, wallets, purses, hats, bags, coats, books, and notes. And you'll have to store any items like that in a secure area. And before you put your cell phone in the locker, you also have to turn it off. They also say they're not responsible for lost or stolen, misplaced personal items. And studying is not allowed in the test center, so make sure if you're studying at the last minute to do it in the car. And let's see. The test is really designed for job responsibilities that are at the entry level of Parks and Recreation. And I debate this, but this is what they said it's designed around. I mean, I know a lot of entry-level people that do not know HR law and things like that, or what's discriminatory or not. They just haven't been exposed to it yet. But it's it's definitely, after a couple of years in the field, you should know most of the stuff. And that's why I'm confident that we're all going to do very well. So within each one of the categories, you may have seen this in some of your materials, but under communication, there's like 15, 16 different areas that they cover. And as a total of the whole 5, there's 96 total tasks that they actually cover. The test is 16% communication, 18% finance, 22% human resources, 24% operations, and 20% programming. And in order to pass the exam, you have to know the content in all 5 categories. And if you've been in this a little while, therapeutic recreation used to be its own standalone category, but now it's included in all 5 categories. And that's because it focuses on inclusion more than just the therapeutic recreation process. There are multiple questions in the test bank for each task item, and each exam contains 125 scored items, and the questions are selected using a sampling procedure. So that's about it on the test. And if you saw some of my notes I wrote already to you, you'll see that there are about 200 questions. And so when you do your practice test, just don't do it once, do it multiple times when we get to that. If you see right here, in week 7, I don't recommend, if you are going to stick with us here, that you don't take those practice tests till after we finish all our 6 weeks basically, and then just take practice tests. So just focus on that until you actually have your test. So at week 8, you can schedule your test, take the practice test that you have online, review the recordings and all the NRPA study materials. In other words, these recordings that we're doing today, and take your test and then celebrate. So with that, I'm going to unmute everybody. If there's any questions, if it works, if it doesn't work, I'll mute you all, and then you can just write your question in chat. So any questions?
No.
Nope.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll start the HR section. I'm going to mute you all again. And if you need to ask a question, just please write in the chat. And I'll unmute at certain times to discuss certain things. When we're done today, hopefully we're going to go through some sample test questions in this particular area. So on the human resource management side of it, I highlighted a number of different things in this book that I think you should at least hear. If you want to know more, you can order the book. It's, like I said, a very good book. And if anybody does have the book and wants to take like finance next week, and walk us through the finance section, I'd be happy to share this particular opportunity. And that would help us all out to hear from somebody different. But so if anybody does order the book and wants to take a chapter or want to work with me on a chapter so we can kind of break it up, please feel free to order the book, and then we can divide it up. So human resource management, you'll hear that word a lot. Obviously agency calls their HR function different things, but it's the design of formal systems in an organization to ensure effective and efficient use of human talent to accomplish organizational goals. So you probably see that on the test somewhere, or at least one of the sample questions. And we as park and recreation professionals, the reason why it's in here is because we need to be competent in several human resource management functions, including, and they always have these words, and so they'll give you like which one is not a human resource management function, and it would be one of the words that I don't say here. So planning, recruitment, selection, placement, development, performance management, compensation and benefits, and employee health, safety, and security. And in this section, 19 HR functions are discussed. And if you listen to the video, there's probably very similar to this. It's just, we want to go through this. And I'm going to stop after every single one of these. And then, if there's any questions or anybody wants to discuss anything, just write a note or write in the chat screen. So when you develop job descriptions, they are derived from the job analysis. So that is a test question. I remember that one when I took the test. And so what the job analysis does is gathers data in a formal and systematic method about what people do in their jobs. And so there's a couple things the job analysis process should do. And it should identify the job under review. In other words, the specific job or the jobs to be analyzed. It should establish a list of participants involved in the job analysis process. And that means to get staff at all levels involved in this process. And it's not just the process itself, but so hopefully people in your organization will develop a fuller understanding of their job and allows them to examine the job domains. Now, before I took this test, I didn't even know what a job domain was, but they use it a lot, so I'm sure it's used in other parts of the country. And what a job domain is the major area of responsibility of a job. So things that a job may entail, and along with tasks. So basically, it's the specific actions an employee completes under each domain. And the sum of all the tasks that the person does equals the job domain. And the sum of all the job domains equals the job title. So that's the way that they organize it. When you do this job analysis, it really helps the employee and the supervisor identify and discuss any discrepancies from what they actually do to what they're supposed to be doing. Another step in the job analysis is to review existing documentation. Another one is to determine and implement data collection methods. Some of these methods include things like collecting information about the tasks to be done on the job, the personal characteristics that are needed, like education or any training or specialized training and things like that. And that's really what a job analysis does. So in order to get this data, they do critical incidents or observations, I should say. They interview people involved with the job, including supervisors and the employee. They look at job performance, where they actually go out and perform the job that's being examined. Structured questionnaires, task analysis, inventory, and then they might meld one or more of these into a combination of methods. And all these results, as I said, of the job analysis serve as the foundation for the job description. And I'll say that one more time because you'll probably see it again. The results of the job analysis serve as the foundation for the job description. And then the job description represents a summarized document of the content identified in the job analysis and specifies what the major job domains are, including the tasks. The importance of well-developed job descriptions are basically that they are defensible when it comes to job-related HR decisions. It can help with recruitment, selection, pay for performance decisions, and the like. And then when developing the job description, the park and recreation professionals should be aware of the following concepts. So these are the 4 concepts. And so when you go back and listen to your recordings, make sure you listen for these. So job, position, domain, and task. And I would say it probably is in reverse order when you want to try to analyze it. Task, then the domain, then the position, and then the job. So the tasks, again, are the specific work activities. I'm going to give you an example here. So it'd be like complete performance evaluations for officials, or develops annual operating budget for youth sports programs. Those are tasks. Once you get all the tasks done, then those can be considered a domain. Then a domain is the primary area of responsibility for the job. So an athletic supervisor job, like I just talked about down below, in the task area might include domains in programming, community relations, scheduling, rentals, facility management, marketing, communication, employee management, and finance. And each one of those areas has one or more multiple tasks below it. And then the position is a set of domains and tasks performed by an individual for that job. And the job is, of course, a group of positions that are identical with respect to their major or significant task and can be addressed by one single job analysis. And then every agency probably has a preferred way of doing their job description. We've all seen them, but they should at least include these things. And this will probably be on a test too. So job title, identification, a summary statement, job domains and tasks, job specifications, and disclaimer. And so the job title, we all know that's the title of the position. The job identification is, that's kind of like who does this person report to? Where are they in the organization? Job summary is basically a brief description, 1 to 2 paragraphs. Job domains and tasks is the essential work areas and activities for the job. Job specifications is the required qualifications. And a disclaimer is basically, the agency's ability to basically change things in the job if they deem necessary. So in summary on that section, basically the job analysis is the foundation. The job description is the actual tool that is used to guide the agency's HR activities. So I'm going to unmute everybody. I don't see any chat notes. Are there any questions about any of that? Or do you want to have a discussion about it? Anybody? Bueller? Do you guys, does everybody understand the domain? Because that was kind of a tough one for me to get my head around. Everybody's good on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Good. All right. The next section is, I'm going to mute you all again. And the next section is recruit candidates for seasonal part-time contract employment. And so this is about recruitment. And it's a set of activities that seeks out and attracts job applicants with the necessary competencies to fill specific positions in the organization. And that's the official definition. The how difficult it is will depend on a number of factors. So we all know that we hire a lot of lifeguards every year, and we run through 100 of them, and it could just take a very short amount of time compared to hiring an upper level position where it might be a national search, and it might take months to get the right person. And so it has a lot to do with, and I'll just go ahead and cover this. So the difficulty of the recruiting task depends on the geographic location of the agency. And these are just examples. The agency's reputation as a workplace, legal and governmental regulations, salary, and benefits. And there's probably a whole lot more, but those are the ones that are in the book. Job descriptions serve a very basic function in recruiting and defining competencies that the successful applicant must be able to perform when hired. And so we already kind of went through the job description, but really it helps guide the recruiter, whoever is in charge of recruitment, and that could be you, in making decisions about the appropriate recruiting sources and methods, as well as evaluating the recruiting process. So every organization has recruitment policies, and those also guide recruiting decisions. And these recruitment policies should include equal employment opportunity, affirmative action, sources of recruits, who performs the recruiting, and the organization's overall approach to recruiting. All your policies should cover that. You don't need to know your own policies for this test. You just need to know that they need to be in there. So but it is important that we as professionals know the specifics of a job description and these formal and informal recruiting policies prior to implementing the recruitment process. That's prior. The recruitment process should start with the development of a recruitment plan. So they talk about a plan, and it should be formalized, but any plan should be written and should have the agency's recruitment philosophy, recruitment goals and objectives, specific policies and procedures for the recruitment process, and the staff needs in the recruitment process, such as training and recruitment. So if you had like a good example is our aquatics program, where there might be some training involved with the recruitment process. So the idea here is that the recruitment is supposed to get us a pool of qualified applicants. And we're concerned about two additional factors: the size of the applicant pool and whether or not it's a realistic job preview. So they even go on to say in the size of the applicant pool that we should be concerned with effectively and efficiently establishing a pool of qualified applicants. And this applicant pool should be of optimal size. The agency must have a goal of attracting a talent pool that is greater than the number of available positions. So if you have 2 positions, you don't want to have just 2 people that are qualified. So establishing an applicant pool requires to advertise a vacant position, and it can be at the local, state, or national level. Part-time positions would most likely be at the local level, whereas like the chief executive officer is what they call it in the book. Could be a director though, would be most likely require a national search. Advertising can be done in newspaper, newsletters, websites, or with professional organizations. And some agencies even use recruiting firms to recruit their positions if they're high enough positions within the organization. Now, did anybody see before I go on, I'm going to unmute everybody, what the optimal size that they recommend is for a candidate pool. Was that in any of the materials that you all reviewed?
Yep.
What was it?
12.
It was 12, correct. So everybody should know that if that comes up, the optimal is 12.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that worked out well. Thank you to the one person who read. Okay, so they also talk about this, and this is one of the areas that I really don't think that we necessarily practice over here, at least on the West Coast that I've seen. But there's this realistic job preview, and it's a goal in the recruitment process to provide the candidates with this realistic job explanation, if you will, but they call it a preview. And informs applicants about all aspects of the job, including both if it's desirable and undesirable facets. And they call it an RJP. That's realistic job preview. It presents both the positive and the negative aspects of the experience. So oftentimes the RJP will require the Parks and Recreation professional to provide a tour of the working area and a discussion of the scope, good and bad, of the job. I don't think we do that necessarily to this extent, but it might be a good practice somewhere else. So recruiting strategies used by the Parks and Recreation professional will vary. A recreation programming intern is not likely to be recruited from the same source as a sport official. So the current labor market may also influence which recruitment strategies an agency utilizes. But this is another thing. So despite various approaches to recruiting seasonal, part-time, or contract employees, a majority of Parks and Recreation professionals will review applicants from at least one of the following sources. And this is where I'm sure you might say, no, we don't do this. But advertisements, unsolicited applications and resumes. No, remember, they said unsolicited. Professional organizations, associations, or employee referrals. So these are ways that they say that we, as Parks and Recreation professionals, review applicants. Well, we do recruitments in our HR agencies, but maybe somewhere in the nation they do it that way. So we'll go through that. So advertisements, basically, it's the most common method of attracting seasonal, part-time, and or contract employees. And you can use different media such as newspaper, radio, television, billboards, posters, and email. Advertisements have the advantage of reaching a large audience, and potential applicants can be directed towards a particular group of readers. In other words, you can look for people with specific academic majors in various institutions, people that have like work experiences or live in a certain area. It says here that considerable time must be spent developing and writing the content of the advertisement, ensuring that the major assets and responsibilities associated with the position are highlighted. And the next section is unsolicited applications and resumes. So this says this is another common method of obtaining applicants is through unsolicited applications and resumes. Again, we're only learning this to pass the test. If I get an unsolicited application resume, I forward it to HR and never look at it to make sure everybody has a fair playing field. But anyway, that's what they say. The professional must develop strategies for receiving and managing these unsolicited applications to avoid quality applicants slipping through the cracks. So in other words, they really advocate here. They're actually saying we should do something with them because they might be a qualified applicant. Okay, professional organizations, associations. So many of these associations provide updated lists of job announcements. And I know I've used APRA and NRPA for positions as well, so that's something we do. Employee referrals. So another popular method is employee referrals or recommendations made by the current employees. So again, that would be outside of our normal process, but that's what they say they do in other areas. So research has found the quality of the employee referred applicants is normally quite high, since employees are generally hesitant to recommend someone who might not perform well. But they can also create controversy, as the process can sometimes be perceived negatively by agency staff as promoting, and they call it inbreeding or violating equal employment opportunity regulations. So yeah, that's employee referrals. And another thing that might happen, if you just rely on this, you might intentionally or unintentionally screen out certain individuals or discriminate against protected classes. Okay, and that concludes that section, which is recruit candidates for seasonal, part-time, and contract employment. I will unmute everybody and see if there's any questions. Okay, any questions? No questions? Okay. Wake up, everybody.
I thought somebody was talking.
Okay. All right. No questions? All right. I'm going to mute you. We'll go on to the next section. Okay. So the next section is review candidates' applications for seasonal part-time employment and contracts. And this HR section is really long, everybody. So, you know, I'm not going to go through every single little point, but just points that I think might be on the test. So I've already read the whole section, and hopefully, you know, I'm giving you the stuff that will be on the test. So once you receive applications, they must systematically, I always look for words like must systematically review each candidate's application. The review process is typically completed in multiple stages to ensure the process has been conducted in a fair and efficient manner. An overview of the most common candidate review stages is, the first one is completion and screening of the application forms, then a preliminary interview, then testing, then reference checking. Now, before I go on, this completion and screening of application forms is the first one. And I don't do this either, but I've never heard of this actually. But completion and screening of application forms, it says that you should ask the applicants for various bits of personal information, such as their name, educational background, career goals, and experience. I think what they're trying to say is on the form itself, you should ask the applicants. But the way it's written, just so you know, it says that we should ask applicants for this information. And that means to me, you know, verbally, but they might just mean it on the application. Information obtained during this phase is then compared to the competencies outlined in the job description to determine if the applicant meets the minimum qualifications for the job. If they do, they move on to the next review stage. If they don't, they're removed. Then there's a preliminary interview. And then this is used by us to determine whether the applicant's skills, abilities, and task preferences match any of the job opportunities in the agency. This typically is brief and they give a time. It's 30 minutes. It's exploratory in nature to screen out unqualified or uninterested applicants and may contain a combination of job and career related questions. And then there might be some sort of a test. So testing is the next one. And some test categories include, here they come, aptitude, psychomotor, I guess that's how you say that, proficiency, interest, and personality. And then aptitude tests, they basically measure the applicant's capacity or potential ability to learn or perform tasks. And this would be like verbal communication or writing samples or numerical tests, reasoning, things like that. Psychomotor tests are most commonly adopted within outdoor-based recreation settings and used to test a person's strength, dexterity, and coordination. Proficiency assessments measure the job-related knowledge possessed by the applicant. And then lastly, the interest tests are designed to determine how this person's interests compared with the interests of successful people in the job. In other words, are they in it for the right reasons? And then personality tests is the last one, and they're used by agencies to identify an applicant's personality traits. And the last section here is reference checking, and usually will occur before or after the second interview. They don't talk about, they talk about the preliminary interview and then some testing, but they never talk about a second interview. But it does say here that most reference checking will occur before or after the second interview. This is a widely utilized step in the candidate review process. And here's something you may want to remember. Typical information to collect during the reference checking stage is the candidate's work history, including former employers, lengths of employment, and previous position titles. You will see that again here in a few minutes. Okay, so on this one, which is review of the candidates' applications, I'm going to unmute everybody. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Nope.
All right. So I have a lot of background noise. So after this one, we'll take a quick break and see how we're doing on time and everything. So 3D is in this section. The next section is select and recommend candidates for seasonal part-time contract employment. So this is the final phase of the selection process when you select and recommend somebody. And basically the employment decision falls into one of three options. So they are rejection, on-the-spot offer, or delayed offer. So rejection obviously is somebody who doesn't make it to the top, should be informed they have not been selected. This can be a phone call, a letter, or in person. We should thank the candidate for their interest in the position and inform them of the employment decision and be professional. And we can also encourage them to consider applying for open positions in the future. On-the-spot offer is very rare, but this would be make an offer to a candidate immediately following an interview. And this decision to utilize on-the-spot offer can vary, but common reasons include time pressures, the need of the agency, candidate's qualification, or potential labor market competitors. And then the delayed offer, which is the most common approach, occurs when the candidate is informed of the hiring decision after a period of time has elapsed. And this varies by agency and situation. And the reason why is because you may have other applicants to interview, or you might be dealing with equal employment opportunity commissions, civil service boards, and things like that, or similar hiring practices like that. But one thing we should do is we should provide the candidate with a tentative timeline of when we'll be making a decision. We should always operate within a legal framework when making employment selection decisions. And you'll need to remember this. The park and recreation professional must avoid discriminating against any applicant based on race, gender, age, or some other factor. And I'm going to read them all to you here in a second. In combating these forms of discrimination, several laws have been enacted. So far, they don't really go through the laws. They do on the CPRE test, the actual law and what it covers. But I do want to point out these areas that are protected. And you'll probably see these again too. So race and ethnic origin, age, and this is typically for individuals over 40 years of age, individuals with physical or mental disabilities, religion, sex, gender, military experience, family status, political party affiliation, national origin, or sexual orientation. And then there's two forms of unfair discrimination. There's intentional and unintentional. And intentional occurs when the hiring manager applies one standard to one set of individuals and a different standard to all others in the workplace. Unintentional occurs when the hiring manager knowingly discriminates against others by adopting certain practices. And the key word here is unknowingly. And so this could be like, for example, having a written test or height and weight requirements or certain educational requirements or time of day, even location if there's not bus service for an interview. So those are the kind of things that would be unintentional. Okay, so that's all there is in that section regarding let's see here. Recommending the candidates for employment. So again, on mute. When I unmute, please try to be really quiet, and because I have a couple questions to ask everybody. Okay. Any questions? No questions? You know who's doing it. Some of you have muted yourselves, so okay. I'm going to have to mute you all. I got one person that's moving around, and I just can't hear. Dogs are crazy today. Okay. So, what if you all could just chat in the or just put in the chat box? Is this helpful so far? Is this where you want it to be, or do you want to try to have a little bit more discussion? or is this what you expected? Because I want to make sure I'm meeting the mark here as far as helping you all. So I got yes, yes, what I expected. Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we're maybe more questions. Okay. If you have a question, we're going to be going through some test questions at the end of this that are in the book. So, and you may have already seen them before, which is okay, but in your materials. But what I'm trying to do is help you to avoid buying this book and spending another $60, $40 to $60. So that's why I'm doing this. But I think it's, if we kind of go through this, we can together. And if you have questions, you can see who else is on the line. You can get together with some help with other people. So I'm hoping there will be other study groups too. So good. Okay. The next section is interview candidates for seasonal part-time employment and contracts. So this is basically interviewing people, which is my favorite topic, as you know. So the hiring process and tools used vary with the type of employee being hired for interviewing. So some agencies will utilize screening interviews where all candidates who are qualified are required to do like a written or phone interview with the hiring committee. So I've never seen a written interview, but I'm sure they exist somehow. I know that, there might be supplemental questions. Maybe they're referring to that, but they call it a written interview. And this is used to narrow the application pool to a manageable number that varies from position to position. Once narrowed, the remaining candidates are invited for a formal interview. And the formal interview process does vary agency to agency, but most should implement a combination of the following steps. So they give you the steps. The first step is to review the job description, to review job-specific criteria and questions to include in the interview process. The next step is to determine the interviewers, who should be selected, and it should be people that understand the job and the required knowledge, skills, and abilities to successfully perform the job. The third step is to select the interview format. So the most popular are, of course, one-on-one, a committee interview with the candidate and a panel of staff, and a group interview with the panel of staff and all the potential candidates together. And if you've ever done one of those, they're really fun, by the way, on both sides. Number 4 is guided by the job description, develop the interview questions. So there are 2 common interview question types. It's a structured interview and unstructured interview. So this is under the 4th step. The structured interview is everybody gets asked predetermined questions. They all get asked the same questions, and it's all based exactly on the job description. And they should be asked in the same order for every candidate. And this, basically the reason why they do this is because each candidate is given equal treatment and no unfair advantage, excuse me. And then the structured interviews also allow the park recreation person to compare the responses of the job candidates to determine who's given the most comprehensive answers out of all those similar questions. And there's 4 types of structured interview questions. So this looks like a chart, and they're going down deeper now. So under the structured interview question, there's biographical, which is chronological evaluation of the candidate's past experience. Behavioral interview questions, which my favorite, which, how they performed a certain task or handled a problem in the past. And this would sound like this. Describe a time or a situation when you did something or were in a group that successfully reached a goal, something like that. Competency questions is the next type of structured interview question, and that is basically covers a list of competencies needed to do the job. Describe an experience where you had to motivate a group of individuals, something like that. Situational interview questions, and you might see this one again in a few minutes. These questions require the candidate to discuss how they might manage specific job situations. So it's not, the behavioral is kind of like tell us about a time or a situation when this happened. And the situation was, what would you do in this situation? Does that make sense to everybody? That should be a real subtlety. One is, what would you do in this situation? And the other one, behavioral, is tell us about a time you had to deal with something along the lines of that situation. So an example of a situational question is, you witnessed your coworker stealing money from the concessions cash drawer during a recent birthday party at the community pool. What would you do? So notice I didn't say, what did you do? It's what would you do? Okay, and then the second type of interview format is unstructured interview. And this has considerable flexibility in how the interview is conducted. There's no set standard questions. You can talk about points of interest. Basically, you get to know the person a little bit better. You can understand their personality as well as their skill set. These allow for a more natural conversation to emerge, afford an opportunity to gauge the candidate's ability to interact with others, and provide more latitude in collecting personalized information about each candidate. Now, notice I didn't say personal information, I said personalized information about each candidate. You can't collect personal information. These type of interviews can be time consuming. If they do ask about, what's the disadvantages of an unstructured interview, they can be time consuming and may make it more difficult for the professional to reliably compare the quality of all the candidates' responses equally. Then the next, and remember we're talking about the steps. So now that was only the interviews, and now the utilization. Number 5 is utilization of interview assessment forms. So the park and recreation professional should develop an interview assessment form, kind of like a score sheet, to consistently measure and score applicants across the various job-specific knowledge, skills, and abilities, so that you can systematically compare applicants on the identified job-specific criteria. Number 6 is interview training. So the interviewers themselves must be trained in the process, their role in the process, and how to effectively conduct selection interviews. And that completes the interview section. Okay, so you can see that Becky, they call them scenario questions. So yeah, so now that's a situational question in disguise. I'll call it that. Good. So I'm not going to mute everybody because there's some noise in the background. But if you have any questions about that last section, we're just going to continue on. We have quite a few sections to go over. And we're going at it an hour. I'm doing okay time-wise. So if everybody else is, I'd like to continue on and then hopefully get to these interview questions at the end. I'm sorry, the test questions at the end. So 3F, is conduct training for seasonal part-time employees and contractors. And this is a huge section. And so I'm not going to get into everything on training on this section. However, I'm going to go over the key points, and then we'll hit most of it. So as part of your job in HR is to facilitate and conduct training. And design and development of training requires a general understanding of training design process. So questions such as, what are the desired knowledge, skills, and abilities the agency hopes to receive from training? Who are the learners, trainees, and how can the agency and trainer ensure staff's readiness for training? All these questions need to be addressed. In addressing these training design questions, training experts have suggested the following steps, and here they are. First of all, conduct a needs analysis. Second, ensure employees' readiness for training. Third, ensure transfer of training. Fourth, develop an evaluation plan. And fifth is select a training method. Oh, and sixth is monitor and evaluate the training program, see if it's working. Now, part of that will be on a test question in just a few minutes. So step one, as I said, was conduct a needs analysis. And it's a systematic needs assessment to be able to figure out the design, development, and delivery and evaluation of the training program. So the needs analysis is a critical first step to determine those specific training needs. And so the needs assessment itself has three components. So it's an agency analysis, a person or individual analysis, and a task analysis. So the agency analysis is an assessment of the agency and its mission or business strategy to determine the appropriateness of the training. In other words, is it in alignment with the rest of the organization? Okay, the next one is the person individual analysis. So this determines whether performance deficiencies result from a lack of knowledge, skill, or ability, or from a motivational or work design problem. You have to identify who needs the training, determine the staff's readiness for training, which, and by the way, readiness for training addresses whether employees possess the ability, attitude, and or motivation necessary to learn the content, and whether the work environment will encourage learning rather than hinder it. The next step in the needs analysis is a task analysis. And it's an assessment and identification of the knowledge, skills, or behaviors that are in need and being developed in the agency. So there's some ways to collect this data, and here they are. Observations, surveys, reviews of administrative documents and manuals, and interviews with subject matter experts. And all of them have disadvantages and advantages. And they give an example. Surveys can be distributed quickly, but it's difficult to get detailed information from that. The next step in conducting basically this training design is ensure the employee's readiness for training. So drawing from the needs assessment data, Parks and Recreation professional is provided with much clearer picture of the performance gap. And the performance gap, and I saw this when I took the test, was the difference between the current state of performance and the desired state of performance. And so that's how they word it. Also, when you ensure the employee's readiness for training, you have to identify the prerequisite learning requirements for the training to make sure that they have all the skills necessary to lead up to what they're being trained for. And you also need ways to address and identify those individuals who fail to meet those prerequisites. Step 3 is to ensure the transfer of training. And this is a very, what I consider a great step, but we really don't do a lot of this, in my opinion, but it's good stuff to know. So the transfer of training refers to effectively and continually applying what they learn in training to their jobs and volunteer experiences. So it's heavily influenced by the trainee's characteristics like motivation and ability, and also the training design, the learning environment, the work environment, and the support from management, the opportunity to perform these skills that they learned, and then all this plays into that effective transfer of training. There's 5 work environment factors that have been identified as key elements in promoting this training transfer. And those are the climate for transfer, manager support, peer support, opportunity to perform, and technological support. And those are pretty self-explanatory. But basically, you want to foster the environment to support from all levels of the agency, and that would cover those, the manager and peer administration. And you want to make sure that the people that are trained have ample opportunities to successfully perform the new trained tasks, and that they have the resources to do so. There's also strategies to reinforce the contingencies associated with trainees' enactment or failure to enact these new skills that they learned. And training programs should incorporate practices such as, and this helps reinforce skill-based pay and pay for performance. And those have been really successful in making sure people retain that knowledge. Should not only review the organizational barriers of transfer to training, but we should also re-examine ways to further promote the transfer of training as the integration of a pay for performance system. And that's really a forward-thinking section, in my opinion. Step 4 is develop an evaluation plan. This is still in training now. And so basically what you want to do is you want to look at whether or not your training has been effective and how do you measure that. And so training programs look for three outcome levels: cognitive, skill-based, and effective. That's affective. A-F-F-E-C-T-I-V-E, not effective. Although they should be effective too. But so cognitive, talks about verbal knowledge, development of skills. I'm sorry, not skills, just knowledge development, knowledge organization, cognitive strategies. Skill-based outcomes now are the development of technical or motor skills. And these include initial skill acquisition, skill compilation, and skill, I don't know how to say this word, automaticity. It's like being automatic. And so these basically mean under the skill base, they get the knowledge, they practice the knowledge, and then they can do it automatically. So just if you remember that, you'll be fine. Let's see here. The last one means automatic is that it's routine and requires little thought. Kind of like when somebody drives a car after you've driven for a few years, you don't really think about it. Okay, so, and then the last one was select a training method. And that basically is, figuring out what kind of, it could be lectures, panel discussions, classroom setting, study groups like we're doing here, field trips, demonstrations, group discussions, audience, question and answers, and all sorts of different types of those types of things. And then the last step in training is to monitor and evaluate the program. And this has to go to the step that is the ongoing evaluation of your program. And is it working? And there might be new things that come out, so you have to adapt and things like that. But the best way to do this is to evaluate it is to make sure that you're gathering data that supports what you're trying to measure. And what you're looking for is objective evidence of employee behavioral changes resulting from the program. And this data might be used to modify and improve the ongoing program to measure the acquisition of competencies by the participating employee or to provide the instructor with evidence regarding teaching effectiveness. Like, we'll know, for example, if this program was successful because you all will pass the first time. And that's my goal. Okay, I'm going to get some water. Yeah, yay. And I'm going to skip the next two sections. We're going to cover those next time. I'm trying to make sure we get through everything I need to get through today. Yes, we're doing good. Okay. So the next section I want to cover is supervise and manage seasonal part-time. They always say supervise, manage is really the section. And then it says seasonal part-time employees and independent contractors, but it could be full-time people too. I don't know why they just focus on part-time, but that's what they do. So if you see that, they've never called out a full-time person yet as something that we're supposed to be doing. Okay. So when you supervise and manage, you organize the work of employees under your supervision. And you divide the work into distinct tasks to assign to employees, and then you coordinate their efforts to make certain the total job is completed. So the content of a work task assigned is one of the most important factors affecting employee retention and motivation. So I'll say that again. The content of a work task assigned is one of the most important factors affecting employee retention and motivation. There are 7 dimensions of work tasks that should be considered when designing jobs and assigning work tasks. Here they are. The first one is physical exertion. And that's the variety of jobs in what we do and the requiring varying degrees of physical exertion, strength, and physical dexterity that's necessary. And that's number one. And remember, I'm talking about the 7 dimensions of work tasks that should be considered when designing jobs and assigning these work tasks. So the first one's physical exertion. The second one is environmental conditions. So this has to do with such things as safety of the workplace, heat, air pollution, noise, darkness, odors, In general, most staff will perceive their assigned job tasks as less pleasant when they're working, in these adverse types conditions. In Arizona, heat would be one of them for sure. The next section that's in here is physical location of the work. So where the work is performed can also influence the desirability or not of a job. So it could be outside, inside, one place, many places, or the type of facility it occurs in, all influences desirability of the job. And we as supervisors should be aware of employee preferences and physical location when assigning job tasks, if it's in the control of us. The next one is time dimension. The time dimension of work includes the hours of the day and the days of the week required for the job task. Like a ranger might work all weekends and all these really busy times, where somebody else might work, 4/10s during the week in an office. So all these have an effect on this factor. So compressed work weeks, flexible work schedules, job sharing, varied combinations of sick leave, vacation time, personal days to enhance employee job satisfaction, and hopefully longevity of this person. Remember, we're talking about this work task and how important it is to affecting employee retention and motivation. We call it job satisfaction too. So the next one is degree of human interaction. So some people don't want to work with customers, and some people want to work with kids and things like that. So it's the amount of type of human interaction required to perform the job task. And employees will have personal preferences regarding the amount and type of interaction they're capable of performing and or desire to perform. So the more that they have interpersonal conflict, like likeliness of interpersonal conflict to be present in a position, the more that they may not enjoy their job. Some people thrive on that, but a lot of people don't. The diversity of facilities and services provided by most park and recreation agencies, we all know this, with varied backgrounds and expertise, just lend itself to, working with different diverse people. So, but I think more than any other department, the diversity of everything we do requires this different backgrounds and expertise anyway. But a supervisor, excuse me, the key point here is a supervisor must work to minimize this employee conflict. The next section is competency requirements. Each job task will require different competencies, varying competencies, including skills, knowledge, and abilities, and other characteristics. The supervisor must make certain that the employees currently possess or will be trained to possess the degree of specialization needed to perform the task. So the specialized competencies required to perform a specific job assignment make the assignment of many work tasks almost automatic. And then psychological characteristics, and so this is the last one about job task. And the psychological characteristics of the job will influence this employee motivation and retention as well. Repeated surveys of employees in the field, in our field, suggest the degree of autonomy provided by the position is extremely important to the employee. Most people like working autonomously in our field, according to this. Some employees see greater responsibility for the management of agency services, while other employees want no part of managing personnel or fiscal control. So supervisors in our field should determine the level of responsibility ultimately desired by each employee. So let me say that again. Supervisors in our field should determine the level of responsibility ultimately desired by the employee. Positive supervision must nurture the relationship with subordinate staff by encouraging professional development to the fullest range of the employee's capacity. And so we need to not only motivate the worker to perform more effectively, we must also try to motivate the worker to perform more effectively. We must also build a rapport with employees in order to encourage cooperation rather than conflict while fulfilling the mission of the agency. And then coming up next is supervision is characterized now by the following set of activities in Parks and Recreation organizations. So this is kind of important because there's two test questions I saw in this little section. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure I cover this. So supervision is characterized by the following set of activities. Okay, here they come. The first one is the interpretation of agency goals and objectives to subordinate staff and to the constituencies of the agency serves. So, in other words, the customers we serve. So I'm going to repeat that. The interpretation of agency goals and objectives to subordinate staff and to who we serve. Second one is the identification of each employee's competencies as well as each employee's willingness to acquire new job skills. The next one is field observations of employees in order to determine whether established standards for service delivery are being met. And that, again, that's field observation of employees in order to determine whether established standards for service delivery are being met. And the next one is the study and improvement of programs and services, including the methods or processes for service delivery, the materials, equipment, facilities, etc. required for the service and the results or outcomes of the operation. Sounds like a job description we're reading here. The next one is visitation and interaction with employees to assist with improvement in efficiency or effectiveness of the service delivery and to recommend desired changes in operations. The next one is the furnishing of facilities, equipment, and supplies that are safe and essential for the fulfillment of the employee's work responsibilities. The next one is the presentation of in-service staff training and development activities that assure professional development and the opportunity for staff to improve their specific job knowledge and skills. And the last one is the evaluation or performance appraisal of subordinate personnel. I'm going to repeat that one. The evaluation or performance appraisal of subordinate personnel. So I just repeated 3 of those, and you'll see those in a few minutes on the test. So successful management of personnel, and they only call out independent contractors, but I would say it's for everybody, requires good communication and helps to develop clear expectation. The good communication helps to develop clear expectations about the scope of the service performed, agency oversight, and performance standards. And a contract that includes a formal outline of these services and expectations should also be developed for the independent contractors. Once a contract has been developed, the Park and Recreation professionals should formalize a plan for monitoring the performance of contractors. And then there's some strategies for making sure that you're monitoring the performance, and that's a review of progress reports, inspections, review of complaints, and review of end user satisfaction. And that concludes that section. Any questions? You can go ahead and unmute. Okay. So we have 30 minutes left, and I want to make sure I get to the test. So let's see what I'm missing here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and the next part has to do with evaluation. And and so I'm going to cover this next time. We're doing pretty good on time, by the way. And by the way, you know that most of you know that I like to give presentations on interviewing and stuff like that. But some of these answers that you're hearing can actually be used, these steps, for example, and how to explain how you, I know I'm off topic, but how you would answer an interview question. So make sure you remember all this. There is a question that we're going to cover that has to do with compensation performance appraisal. And it's one of the performance appraisals we'll go through next time. But because I have it in this particular section, I want to go through it. We don't have time to go through this whole section. But I will give you kind of a prelude. So this is under evaluate seasonal part-time employee performance. We're going to go through it in more detail next time. And the first step is to is a probation performance appraisal, a staff training performance appraisal, a performance improvement appraisal, and a compensation performance appraisal. And the reason I want to go through this is because if you find any other information on this particular question, please share it next week with the group. But under the compensation performance appraisal, there's a question that's going to come up. But basically what this is the most frequently used type of performance appraisal, the compensation performance appraisal. And it's strictly one of measurement, and if possible, should provide a numerical or percentage ranking of employees, either by department or agency-wide. There are several conditions that must exist before a pay-for-performance system can work. And we're going to go through those next time, but one of them is the park and recreation professional must be able to measure performance in a valid and reliable way. The performance appraisal instrument must be based on job-specific performance requirements, and supervisors must journey from their offices and actually observe whether staff performance is less than, meets, or exceeds established standards. And there's 3 other criteria, and the other 3 are, I'm sorry, 3 other conditions, excuse me. So the first one is criteria for measuring performance must be identified and accepted by both the employee and organization. The second one is the third one is employees must have the opportunity to improve their knowledge, skills, and thus their job performance through workshops, conferences, and classes. And the last one is the pay or merit increase must truly match performance. Performance differentials must match pay differentials. Now, all that being said, I want to cover this again next week, but there's a question and it really doesn't match what's in the book. So that's why I'm covering it right now, because we're going to go through that question. And then if you find anything on it for next week, please let me know. Okay, the last section we're going to do today is administer disciplinary action. And basically, we all know that we have to administer discipline at time to time. Disciplinary action is administered to discourage, and this is why it's administered, okay? So it's to discourage incompetence, misfeasance, that's a hard word to say, misfeasance, and that is conduct that is lawful but inappropriate, and malfeasance, which is intentionally doing something that is illegal. and nonfeasance, which is a failure to act where there was a duty to act, or any other negative behavior. So that's something, I don't know, can somebody speak on chat and tell me if that was covered in the online tutorial? Because that's something that it was covered. Okay, thank you. So that's good, and hopefully this helps to reinforce it. So agency personnel manuals should clearly describe the required behavior of employees in such areas as timelines, punctuality, and work assignments, as well as unauthorized absences, active dishonesty or pilferage, refusal to perform assigned work tasks, violence, or the verbal abuse of patrons or coworkers, and any unauthorized use of department facilities, vehicles, equipment, or supplies. So that's what disciplinary action is all about. This progressive discipline procedures that are selectively administered progressive discipline is really the point of this particular chapter, and it's selectively administered depending on the nature and degree of the infraction. And your agency, in practice, we all know that we have HR to help us to determine that. But the point here is that if you caught them doing something really egregious, you don't just start with a verbal reprimand, and that's what they want you to know. So verbal reprimands, when they do give them, and this is the order it goes in, minor infractions. So again, this is the order they go in. So verbal reprimands are given for minor infractions, and this is really a discussion with the employee about the infraction and a course of action to be taken by the employee to deal with the situation. The next step is a written reprimand. And this is a statement that's placed in an employee service record. Sometimes it's for a specific period of time, and they use 6 months as the usual amount, specifically identifying the infraction of personnel policies and that the infraction was not serious enough for further action. It should be discussed in both with the employee and signed by both parties. And then the next one is suspension enforced, is what they call it. And this is a suspension of basically is the relinquish your job title and your duties without compensation for a specific period of time. The next one is a demotion. We all know what that is. Basically, reduction in job title or position, pay, and any privileges. And discharge and termination. And they say that are only for just cause, and this action often occurs after a suspension and after an investigation proves the allegation of wrongdoing. So, make sure I got it. The last thing I want to go through, offenses that employees may commit typically require disciplinary action include, and they give a whole list of these: incompetence due to insufficient preparation, immorality, lack of integrity, absence without authorization, gross negligence, and conduct unbecoming of an employee. So such infractions as lateness, incompetence, and breakage or loss of property are acts that, through repetition, show poor job performance. Continuous breaches of proper job performance indicate a lack of fitness for the position and the need for appropriate discipline action. Any of these types of breaches of conduct may result in disciplinary action, the level of which will be determined by the seriousness of the offense. Immediate termination may result in cases such as drug, alcohol violations, criminal activity, and physical violence. Those are 3 of the 7 deadly sins, as I say. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions, please write them down. I don't see any questions. So now I want you all, we're going to take a little test here. We only have like 7 questions, so it won't take very long. So you can see, can everybody see it on my screen? Could somebody say yes if you can see it on the bottom of my screen? Okay. So the results of which activities serve as the foundation of the job description? Employee recruitment, job domain, position classification, or job analysis? Go ahead and put your answer in chat. All right, most people are saying job analysis or D. That is correct. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, the next one is typical information collected when contacting references for job candidates includes work history, age and gender, previous medical, or personal contacts. All right. You guys are good. All right. Yes, it's A. Excellent. Now, let me ask you guys this while I'm doing this. Have you guys seen, were these questions on your online tutorial? All right. Well, then maybe we don't need to go through this, but we'll talk about that some more. So which of the following would be an administrative function of performance appraisals? This is the one that I was saying is was not covered in the book that I saw, but I mean it's an easy question. But so which of the following would be an administrative function of the performance appraisal? Communication of performance expectations for a merit salary increase, identifying areas in which the employees might wish to grow, linking performance appraisal results with employee training needs, or permitting the employee to comment on the supervisor's performance. C, A, okay. So again, what I read to you, that's why I wanted to go over that section. It never said, you know, which one would be an administrative function, but the answer is A. So everybody take a look at this one. So you make sure that we're all on the same page here. And if you find some information on it, I think I might underline it too. And if you find some information on this one, yeah, it makes sense. I agree. But it doesn't, you know, even said in this section that for a merit salary increase, you know, you had, in that section, you had to go out and observe. So anyway, it has to do with performance, and I guess it's just the communication of performance expectations. But if you find any information on that one, please share it next week, okay? All right, the next one. So, before discharging an employee with a pattern of tardiness, what is the most appropriate sequence for following the corrective actions? So there is 1, 2, and 3. You can read them and then put them in order and just write the letter down, please, or the number. Correct. It's 3, 2, 1, or D. Excellent. You guys don't need me. Okay, so the next one is consider the following structured interview question. I can't see it. you witness one of your staff stealing from the agency, how would you respond? This question best represents which of the following. It's either situational, competency, biographical, or differential. All right. Excellent. And the last one for today, let's put this all on one page. Nope, there's 3 more. So which of the following is not an appropriate activity for the Parks and Recreation professional to perform while supervising seasonal employees? And you can read it there, please. I'm losing my voice. Uh-oh. Did I get that one wrong? Hold on one second, everybody. Hold on. That looks like it has 2 wrong. Let me see which one it is. I typed these up really fast, so hold on. Yep, I made a mistake. So let me correct this, please. I apologize. Determine bear with me, I'm sorry. That's probably better. Now you can answer it. Okay, everybody see what I did? Sorry about that. Okay, it is B. And everything else is okay to ask. Excellent. Thank you. Next question. What is the Park and Recreations professional's first step in staff training process? Go ahead and put your answer there. Correct. C it is. Now, I just want to point out something. Determining specific training needs, what they said in the book was conduct a needs analysis. You all remember that? So I just want to point that out. So specific training needs, conduct a needs analysis. Means the same thing. Okay, last question for today. According to federal, state, or local laws, employee discrimination is prohibited based on an employee's, and everybody should get this right, especially if you're over 40. Okay, good. All right, so this is the end of this session. So before you hang up though, I'm going to ask you to put in chat anything you'd like to see for next time, a little bit better or different. This is a very new process for all of us, so we're just trying this format. I mean, a telephone call might be more effective, but snacks? See, that's funny. You know, getting together would be fun. Okay, so disperse the questions throughout. Margaritas are always fun. All right. Okay, well, looks like I have a pretty fun group here. So I'm going to unmute. Should I try that again? And then maybe we can Okay, so everybody's unmuted now. So if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and ask.
We are the Department of Fun.
Mhm.
Tyrell is correct.
I agree with you on that.
Maricopa's motto, huh, Brandy?
That's right.
All right, so was this helpful, you guys? Or
Yeah, it's help.
Mhm.
do we need to do something differently?
No, I liked it. It was good. That was me.
Okay, well, you know, if you all want to just buy this book, I think it'd be helpful. Because,
I bought it already.
okay, who was that said that?
Louis.
Okay, well, if anybody bought it and would like to take like a couple chapters like I just did, not chapters, but sections, you know, next week and help me out, that would be fun too, I think. So we can talk about that too. If anybody's interested, just email me. You all have my email.
Okay.
So the schedule is, you know, the next 7 weeks we'll go through this like this, and then by then you will have gotten to all the material and have ready to go for your test.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Happy
Sounds good.
Friday 13th, everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Weekend.
Hey, I have a question now. May 25th. I was just wondering if there was any chance that anybody realized that was a long weekend. And that's our last session. And May 25th, if maybe we could think of maybe going on Thursday. That last one. Just if.
How about that? How about that last one we all try to meet?
Again, it's a long weekend. Not that I would want to meet you guys.
I think some people are leaving town is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
No, I mean early in the week.
Oh yeah, good. Early in the week, or I would, anything but that Friday, and because I would hate to miss the last session after going through it all. So just think about it. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week would be
Okay.
fun.
Well, everybody think about that, and we'll discuss it as we progress. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Rod.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
you.
weekend.
All right,
You
thank you.
too.
Thanks, Rod.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.